She is a light worker, and we're honored to welcome Grace. So let's give her a hand. Just welcome tonight. Namaste, and I love you. This is the interview part, and usually I take it easy on people, and every week every event has its own different flavor. I guess with Rabbi Mark it was very easy. We had a nice interview, and he was prepared. We had the questions in advance, and when I asked him the question, he would say, "Oh, that's question number 5." So he was ready. And then the following week, I just asked one question. I didn't even get to ask the one question, and the guest shared for 3 hours. And it was wonderful. You guys remember that, right? And then with Dr. Love, with George, he was here, and it flows. And earlier today, when Grace was here, she says, "Can we do this first, or we do that last? I have this planned." And I said, "This is wonderful. I'm here to celebrate and enjoy, and it is your show." Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful for all she's done before that, and that light celebration was wonderful. And I'm going to ask you a few questions. If you go on the internet and if you start Googling her name and stuff, you're going to see a lot of information about her. What I want to know is about her, the person, the human being. So can you tell us a little bit about, just tell us a little bit about your background?
So that seems like a loaded question. Because in this embodiment, I have a story. And we all have stories. But it's just one of millions of stories. So I can share about, as a child, what some of my blessings and gifts were, some of which were very painful, but they were blessings and gifts nevertheless. But I want to just have a little caveat there that it's one of millions of stories of my embodiments, all of my embodiments. So this particular embodiment, where I'm an Italian, born and raised with a Catholic family, who gave me my strong foundation, my grandmother, who I owe so much to because she was one of my very first spiritual teachers. And she really lit me on fire with the scriptures. And she was my first guru in this embodiment. We'll call her Granny. I called her Granny. You can call her Granny too. And this Catholic upbringing would bring me to church every single morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, every single day, without fail. And I was caught on fire by the priest and the mass and the ritual, and you can see that I'm still doing that ritual and stuff. And I wanted to be a priest so much. There are a couple of things, though, in this embodiment that when we talk about karma, and I will hopefully get a chance to talk a little bit about karma later, but in this embodiment, I was born as a female in this embodiment, and I was born into this Catholic Italian family in this embodiment, and I was also born, really, my sexuality was that I was attracted to little girls, even at 4 years old. I had a girlfriend at 4 years old. She was a church-going girl. Yes, I know. But see, in this embodiment, being a girl and liking girls and being in this Catholic family was a bit of a conflict there for me, because I couldn't be who I really wanted to be, who I felt born to be. And when I came into puberty at 15, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, and I was kissing this girl on the porch, and Granny saw, and so did my mother. And I was kicked out. I was taken out of high school, ripped away from all of my friends, and it wasn't surprising then at that early age, the way in which I dealt with it at that time. My coping mechanism at the time was I started to use chemical substances to alter my mind and alter my mood. And I wasn't happy with who I was. I was really, I couldn't reconcile. Why would these people who loved me so much and who I loved so much, why they didn't like me anymore, or why they stopped loving me, or why they kicked me out of the family. And worse than that was that they said that I was going to go to hell, and that God was very upset with me. And so yoga, I'll talk about later, I hope, will be, is the meaning of yoga is union with God. And I think that from that point forward, I was searching for my reunion with my family, reunion with God. And I carried around a lot of resentment for many, many years because of this injury that turned out to be an amazing blessing and an amazing gift. Because as I share now that story with you, maybe there are people in the room who can relate to not feeling loved, or not feeling wanted, or not feeling part of, or feeling separated from, or feeling, when we talk about this world and what's happening today, racism, sexism, homophobia, classism, all of the isms, all of the hate. When I think about my story, quote unquote, my story, it's like, well, my own family didn't love me or stopped loving me. It's like our biggest fear, I think. And so it really was it's not a surprise that that's your first question, because that really hits a button for me when you ask me about my childhood and growing up. But I really want to make sure that everybody hears that the first thing I said, first of all, was that this is just one of millions of stories that I have in this embodiment, but many embodiments. And the second thing that I think is important to note is that my very first thing was that I honored my grandmother as my first guru, because she was.
Thank you. I've been impressed about your bio and all the things you've been doing. And the most impressive thing is being a minister, ordained minister, a reverend. And not everybody just would wake up one morning and say, I want to be a priest. I want to be a reverend. I want to be a guru. I want to be a spiritual leader. My question is, when did you feel the calling? How did you come about being a priest or a reverend or a minister or a woman, a man of the cloth or a person of the cloth? How did that start? How did you get that thought?
Again, context of embodiments. So I know, I experience, I feel that I was probably always, in some way, shape, or form, called to minister, and was always in ministry, in all embodiments. I don't know many of them. I know some of them from some past life regressions that were done for me, but I don't know them specifically, but I feel them, and I experience that I was, in all probability, had that role at some point in every single embodiment. But this embodiment, from when very little, my first memory, 4 years old, going to Mass every morning, watching the priest, memorizing the Mass, coming home, and playing as one of my big games every single day was to have Mass with my stuffed animals. And I was an only child for 9 years. And so I would put all of the stuffed animals out, just like this circle, just like this. And I would use Neckos as my communion that I would hand out to them. And my grandmother made me vestments that I wore every single time I would perform Mass. And so that's really the first, in this embodiment, time that I felt called. And so at 7, I wrote to the Pope, who was Pope Paul VI at the time. And I wrote to him and I said, I want to be a priest. I know I'm called to be a priest. And I know that I'm a girl. And I know that that's not allowed. So would you make an exception? And I got back in the mail a papal blessing. And if anybody is Catholic or knows of the Catholic tradition, to receive a papal blessing in the mail from the Pope is very, very important. Very important. So my grandmother was so excited, and she laminated it. And so I wrote a second letter because I didn't feel like that was the answer. I asked a specific question. I wanted a specific answer. I wanted the exception to be made so that I could become a priest. And that time I was sent papal rosaries, which I actually still have, and I bring with me. They're in my ministry box in the back. But the real call, I think, came 2 years ago, practically, in the practical realm, when I lost my job. I'm a professor, and I teach college, and I was teaching in a local school here in Miami. And I was working for 3 years, and I had many publications, and I had much committee work, and very strong student feedback, good feedback from the students, and it was all systems go. And when it was time for me to put in for my portfolio for tenure, which means promotion and security of position, I was turned down. I didn't get it. And I was pretty devastated. And so it was another, what seemed like a painful thing, to be an amazing blessing. Another teacher. And the teacher was the dean, who said no. And then I appealed it, and the president of the college said no. And in my desperation and in my why? Not fair. Doing everything right. Doing everything good. I don't understand. I'm doing good work. Why? Why is this door closing? And so in prayer and meditation and in my vigilance of my practice and my wanting to always be a better person and figure out what's the lesson in this, I guess. It's like, well, what do you really want to be when you grow up? You know, I was a former lieutenant in the NYPD for 20 years, and I did that work. And that was one career. And then I got a Ph.D. in social work, and I thought that being a professor was going to be my thing, you know, in my semi-retirement. But when I went deep within, it was like, okay, if you could do anything, what would it be? I want to be a priest. I want to be a minister. I want to be a, you know, and I don't want to be a priest in the Catholic Church because that's my consciousness has expanded in a different way and in just a more expanded way. And so to be a priest is not really what I meant in my heart. It was, I want to be a minister. So what do I do? How do I do that? And I looked online. I actually went to my guru, and I asked him, what did he think? And that's Swami Jyotirmayananda in Miami. And I had been initiated as a Sanyassi in his lineage, which is just a deeper commitment to the spiritual practice. And he said, become an Interfaith Minister. And the rest is history.
Wonderful. Well, you just mentioned that you were in New York Police Department for 20 years. And I've also, through the grapevines or the internet, found out that you were helping. So, yeah, the Google grapevine. I found out that you were helping the victims, the families of the victims after 9/11. and you played a role in easing the suffering of a lot of people. And I've also found out that you were deployed in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina by the United States government. They sent you there to help people. How is it like to actually trying to be there, trying to help others, and sometimes there is not much you could do for them except just to ease their pain or listen to them. How is it like to see people suffering, and how can you balance between your emotional wellness and being there for other people, compassion fatigue and all these things? And that will lead me to my next question. I want to hear your answer first.
So I had a really amazing experience with 9/11. And 9/11 for me is a whole year of a time period. And I was a lieutenant in the NYPD. Because of the Ph.D. in social work piece, I was placed in this position. And all of the practical reality stuff is not important. What is important is that, the divine one source knows exactly where you are and where you're standing at every moment. And so for me, it's not even because I have a PhD in social work that's why I was there and was able to do that work. No, I know that I was called to do that work, and that's why I decided to go to the left that morning and not to the right. Because if I had gone to the right, I might not be here today, and I might not have been able to help. And my partner Chris and I would not maybe be here, or she might not be here. So I know that angels and the spirit guides and the ancestors and the elders and all of the magic of the universe set everything up in the way it was supposed to be set up. But the work that I did with the families was for about a year. And then later on it was with the cops themselves because of stress and post-traumatic stress. And I escorted families to Ground Zero by ferry. And there was 50 people per boat trip each day, 3 boat trips a day, from what was called the Family Assistance Center all the way down to Ground Zero. We did that every single day. And there was a moment. There are times where I have, and I'm sure you do too, moments of enlightenment. I want to read something later on from Adyashanti that he talks about moments of enlightenment. There was a moment where there were thousands of people about a couple of days after 9/11. So it was like September 12th or 13th. And there were thousands of people. Chris was one of the social workers that was there helping. And helping just to take information from families about their loved one and what they looked like, and pictures and toothbrushes. And because as you know, there were only about half of the people at the World Trade Center who were discovered. Their remains were found. But there was a moment where there were thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I looked up and I saw them. And I could see their individual souls. And I knew we were one. In that moment. And it was a moment. And it was an overwhelming moment. And it was an overwhelming feeling. But it was also in that moment that I knew that I was doing ministry. Now my practical self, my ego self, that smaller self, took over, as happens a lot. And that smaller self, that ego self, thought it was doing a lot of the work, and thought it was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and thought it was doing all of the listening, and thought it was doing all of the compassion and empathy. And so it wasn't surprising then in 2003 when I finally retired from the NYPD that I had now depression and PTSD and anxiety. And I had to take a lot of medication to go to sleep at night. And I had to take a lot of medication to not have a panic attack. And then I took other forms of medication because the other medication wasn't enough. So I had to take more of it. And until I just wanted to just blur out what I was feeling, which was sadness, despair, and anger, and resentment. Why was I put there? Why did I have to do that work? Poor me, poor me, poor little me. But it's recovery. I have to give that honor to recovery first in my life. It's my recovery that has saved me. It's my recovery that's helped me have a union, a reunion with the God of my understanding, this higher power, this one source. And to remind me that it was the higher self, it was the blessed self that was serving the blessed self in all that day, those days, those weeks, those months, not the smaller self. Because this, you see, the higher self, as I understand now, the blessed self in all, the jiva, the atman, the soul, it can't be touched. It can't be depressed. It can't get anxious. It can't get sad. There's nothing that can touch that higher self. Nothing. It's perfect. It's existence, knowledge, and bliss. It is joy, full, complete, and total. But that took a process.
So for the last about 2 years, it's been a profession and a job, being a minister, a priest. Almost 2 years.
It's a year that I was ordained.
Okay, it's been
in
a year.
June. I was ordained in June.
Being a minister, a priest, a reverend, it's a job. It has a business aspect, and its work, a schedule, has obligations. It comes with responsibilities. How was it like being a minister? What do you do in the course of a day? How does that reflect on your personal relationships and on how people view you and how you view others? That's enough for now.
So I would love for this to be my full-time job, but it isn't. My full-time gig is being a professor. So I'm still, I still teach at Nova, I teach at Barry, I teach wherever you ask me to teach. So I say yes, 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 yes. And I teach everywhere. I teach about, you don't even want to know how many courses I actually am able to juggle. Online, on ground. And I teach sociology, criminal justice, and social work. So that's what I do for money. Everything that I do in my ministry currently is of service. So it's not a paid profession. Although, if anybody has any ideas, I am welcome to hear them. Because someday, if I can do this and be fully self-supporting on my ministry, that would be awesome. But I'm open. I'm open. And so, there's a Hebrew word, hineni. Hineni. I am here. I am ready. Show me the way. And so I continue each day to do whatever it is I do, whether it be teaching a class or grading a paper or doing a service, as being a divine instrument, an instrument in the hands of the divine. Currently, once a month, I'm speaking at Shepherd's Bridge, where we lead a worship service, which is an interfaith, very, very interfaith, spiritual 1 hour, sometimes a little longer service, which involves a message and some ritual like you saw tonight. and some song. Once a month, I'm also been asked to speak at the Metaphysical Chapel, and that's where I speak on once a month as well. And I'm also a dean at the International Seminary for Interfaith Studies in New York. So I travel once a month to New York City, and I'm a dean there for the accelerated students, and I get a chance to have some more teachers, because the students, my students are definitely my teachers. I don't know if that answered the question.
Wonderful. She had talked about how you really had to go through a lot of experiences in order for you to be here today, where you're at. You know, you remind me of this poem by T.S. Eliot. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if I can remember. It says, "We shall not cease exploring, and at the end of our exploration will be when we reach the point where we started, and then we'll know the place for the first time." So sometimes we have to go full circle to actually see where we're at and understand where we're at. What is your vision of Karmageddon, the shift? What can a human being do on a personal level to create and make changes in their karma, and what they could do on a social, the society level, and what can we do as a society on a global level? It's a three-part question. You can answer it in any direction, any way you want.
So, I'm Italian, right? So I have to use two hands to talk. I do. So, okay, there you go. So when I thought about this really awesome word, Karmageddon, and what that means, or what that might mean, I was thinking about shift, and the word shift, and the shifting in our planet, and the shifting in consciousness. And I was thinking about, where does this all begin? And it really begins with us. It begins with us shifting. It begins with me shifting. So I'm growing and I'm evolving and I'm shifting my consciousness. And so all of these things that have been happening to me since I was little, I'm still little, but when I was young, all of these painful things. Rumi has this amazing quote about the polishing, and then if we're annoyed by every rub, how will we ever be polished? I didn't make it up, though. It was Rumi. Rumi. So this rubbing that happens to me, whether it be my family is telling me that I'm getting pulled out of high school, or my family is telling me that I can't live there anymore, or my family is not answering the phone when I call them, or whether it be I'm losing the job, or whether it be 9/11 happens, whatever it is, it's always something, isn't it? It's just always something happening to us. Change. We don't like change. Nobody likes change except the wet baby. Right? But every time these things happen, it's another opportunity for me to shift. It's another opportunity for me to grow. And so, in the Hindu peace chant, we're talking about Karmageddon, end of times, the shift, what's happening, oh my God, what's going to happen at the end. We want to really try to raise the energy of peace on the planet. So the peace chant, Punamada, Punamidam, Puna, Punamadachate, Punasha, Punamadaya, Punameva, Vajashate, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And what that means is, as I understand the translation, all that is, this one power, this one divine intelligence, this one divine source, this light, that is all that is. Yet that created this. So this has come from that. And yet, that still remains whole. And then the end of the chant, Om, which is, again, the name of Absolute, the One. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shanti is peace. And we say it 3 times because the peace within, the peace I find within that space, somewhere inside here, when I go within that peace, the peace of those who surround me, that I am interacting with in this time and space right now, and the peace of the unknown, the peace for that which we don't know what's going to happen. Somebody asked Swami Jyotirmayananda a couple of weeks ago, so what happens when 2012 happens? December 22nd, 2012. And he said, who cares? So what? Because that which created this is still whole, that whole.
Yes.
So what Karmageddon means to me is, first, I got to keep my eye on the ball, my game, my hula hoop, my lane. I'm gonna share a story. I'm gonna share a story about Orlando and Universal. May I? Okay. Because you asked me about, your minister, what's your typical day? Okay, so here's my typical day as a minister. Go to Universal Studios, go have some fun with some friends, and I don't know if anybody has ever seen Despicable Me, the movie Despicable Me, the little minions. I love those minions. And I saw a minion. I saw a stuffed animal minion at Universal, and I wanted to buy it. And I couldn't buy it because it wasn't for sale. It was a game. You had to play the game. So you play the game, and I lost the game, and I didn't get the minion. So we travel all over, and I'm so sure and I'm so certain that the minions are going to be found at Disney, because after all, it's a Pixar movie, isn't it? So I go into Disney, and we go to downtown Disney. We go into the World of Disney store, and there's a woman, and she's a staff member. Disney, and I ask, where's the minions? And she says, you don't even know what I'm talking about. I said, from the movie, Despicable Me. She doesn't know what I'm talking about. I said, the subsidiary, Pixar, which is owned by Disney. And I'm thinking, she doesn't know her stuff. She doesn't know her stuff. She didn't get that memo during orientation about Pixar and who Pixar is and Despicable Me and all movies. Because you should really memorize that, shouldn't you? If you're a Disney employee. And I move on, and I dismiss her as in my body language, my kinesics, my body motion, body posture just completely dismisses this staff member that needs definitely some in-service training. And I walk on, and I go to another staffer, and I ask about Despicable Me. And she says, that's Universal. It's not Disney. Universal Productions made Despicable Me. Wah, 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 wah. I say this to say that I'm a work in progress. I am getting better. I am getting better, a day at a time. But the shift has to happen with me. So good news is I'm aware that that was arrogant on my part. The good news is I'm aware that I don't know everything. The good news is I don't think I hurt anybody's feelings. I may have in my dismissingly walking away from the first woman. I may have. And that will be part of my karma. When someone dismisses me and someone thinks something about me. And that will definitely happen, because the law of karma is cause and effect, and it will happen. But the awareness and the shift happens within first, for me.
Thank you. Well, there are, it's my belief anyway, that in order to create the shift, maybe I have to make some choices. Maybe I need to draw some lines. Like for me, the example I've been giving is I made a decision that I'm going to only eat eggs that are coming from free-range chicken. So this way I don't want to contribute to the cruelty that's happening. I don't want to carry that karma of using chicken and stuff. I'm willing to pay an extra couple of pennies and do that. This is one of many little things that I've been doing. So that's on a personal level. So what do you think on a personal level? One of the things that probably you already started doing or you're planning on doing in order to just to add one more or to take an extra step towards changing your personal karma.
I just want to say a word about karma for a moment before I answer that question, because my understanding of karma has helped me to kind of watch my step, kind of keep me on my toes, my own GPS, so to speak, keep me in my lane. I believe this, this is my belief, that we have this storehouse of karma called sanchit karma. And it's this storehouse, it's like a bank account. It's from all of our embodiments, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because there's good karma, there's bad karma, and there's neutral karma, for lack of a better word, simplifying it. So this sanchit, this storehouse of karma, we've got this like kind of to work with, you know, and when we come into this embodiment, we're given prarabdha karma, which is like, from that karma, we get this like clay to work with. The stuff that tells us what our family is going to be. It tells us if we're going to be Italian. It tells us if we're going to be short. Like all of that is just like already there. It's dinja prarabdha. We can't help it. Okay. Boom. This is what you have to work with. Your class, your ethnicity, all of it. Your talents. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But then there's Kriyaman. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Hadi would tell me if I am. I'm not. Kriyaman karma, which is as you go karma, kind of as you go, not pay as you go, but go as you go along karma, which is now I can change my karma. See, I can purify my karma. So when really bad stuff happens, it's like, swing. I just burned off some karma. Very good. I don't have to revisit that again. Excellent. I can move on. But I also can change my karma currently through being what's called in Sanskrit sattvic, which is pure. There's sattvic, there's tamas, and there's rajas. So tamas is the kind of really the bad stuff, and then rajas is kind of ego stuff. But the sattvic nature, the good nature, to be good, to do good, if I could just really keep it simple, to be good and do good, every single action, word, deed, thought is going to help my karma along the way. So what do I do? Well, when it was time for a new car, my partner Chris, who's very, very ecologically conscious, who recycles, who is a vegetarian, who is of a very enlightened soul, urged me to think about the Prius. And at her urging, because I don't think I would have gone in that direction if she didn't urge me, but she urged me. See, so the universe puts people in our path and in our life, and I'm blessed to have a soulmate who is always teaching me. So I went with the Prius. So that's one way. The Sufi Gates is another. And the Sufi Gates is about my word. Every word that comes out of my mouth, I have to try to really, and I fail at this often, but I try to say, is what I'm about to say true? If it's true, it can pass through the first gate. Is it necessary? It usually is never necessary. And it's definitely not necessary to be said by me. If it's not necessary, it shouldn't pass. And in the third Sufi gate, is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And if it isn't any of those three things, then it should not pass the gates. So I try to do that as much as possible. I try to be good and do good and really try to keep it simple as much as possible and service to others.